And we're live. What's good, Internet? We're back. Afternoon delight. Man, what a freaking night of NBA basketball last night. Your boys, it's Corey, Larry. We're here. How we doing?
I'm really kind of upset. I feel like the collared shirt thing was my thing.
Right. Well, now I'm back at work, so this is what I look like when I'm being a professional.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just start wearing some graphic tees.
It's only week 2. I feel like by week 3 I'll be jaded enough to go back to just t-shirts.
Sure.
That's if education in America lasts that long.
Balls.
So let's start with an absolutely epic game 7 last night.
That game was a ton of fun.
I'm going to be completely honest. It caught me off guard. The way this thing always goes is that the Cinderella, just in 7-game series, you just don't get over the hump. You can make it to the edge, and then the dominant team wins. That's just the way it usually goes. And at times it felt like that, but even when the Clippers were up, it still didn't feel like they were putting their foot to the gas. It felt like they were just still coasting even when they were up.
Oh, I think we got to start to understand that this isn't the Clippers coasting. This is just who the hell they are. At the end of the day, I don't think they might have never ever been a light switch team because there's just no light to flicker. Like this is who they are. This is the team that they have built. Their bench on paper looked a lot better than it actually turned out to be. And then we talked a bunch about it yesterday. The Clippers, they're kind of penciling them in as the team that just going to stomp over them, but we agreed that they had nobody to cover Jokic. Like that, it was even worse than we thought going into this game 7. They have nobody to put on Jokic, and then it's that game 6 was alarming because Kawhi and Paul George both went off. They both went off, and they still lost. Okay, now great. Now we're in game 7, and now you basically need Kawhi, Paul George, and somebody else to go off. And there's that lingering, I started hinting at it yesterday. There's that lingering time where if one of these guys on Denver goes off, it's a different game. And Jamal Murray was that guy yesterday.
Jamal Murray went off. And, bubble Jamal Murray has pretty much been a superstar. It feels like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic have been 2 of the, 7 best players in the playoffs.
Yeah, probably. Jokic is different. Jokic is going to bring it every night.
Jamal, by the way, the Clippers lost to this guy.
Of course they did. Jamal Murray is more of a, he has superstar ceiling, but it's not consistent enough to where you want this to be your number 1 guy. Inevitably, he's going to get paid as if he is a superstar. However, the consistency still isn't there. He's more of a matchup superstar. In the right matchup, he's a superstar. But, he did what he had to do last night, and he balled out.
He did. And Jokic has cemented himself as a top 5 impact player. Look, the Nuggets are smart, and it's not like this was a secret. We said before the series even started, all you got to do is give the ball to Jokic in the post, and he's going to find as many players as he possibly can because the Clippers have nobody to stop him down there. And if you double down, all he's going to do is be able to kick it out to shooters and cutters and all the things that he did to absolutely dissect the Clippers. The Clippers had no answer. And my thing with the Clippers is, one, we've touched on it. They don't have anybody to orchestrate all of the stuff that they need to do. At least with like Kawhi last year, he had Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry is going to get you into what you need to do. Patrick Beverley's not that guy. Lou Williams not that guy. Lou Williams is about buckets. Lou Williams wants to go get a bucket. He is not going to get the team into the offense. Patrick Beverley, I don't know if that dude has ever dribbled past half court. That dude gets to half court, he kicks it out, he runs to a spot, he stands there, he waits for a kick out. Kawhi's not that guy. Paul George is not that guy. On top of Paul George not being a guy who's showing up and hitting shots, Paul George is not the guy who's going to get his teammates involved and make them better. As unpredictable as this would have seemed and did seem at times during the series, it kind of makes sense that it played out this way.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. Also, the Clippers would have been home. This would have been a home game for them. So it's fun that we get this in the bubble to where it's more of, again, that hockey type feeling that any team can win. Now, to win championships, you usually need one of three. It's usually a combination of one of two things. It's a really good player surrounded by a bunch of really good players, or let's say one superstar surrounded by a bunch of really good players, or you need three superstars surrounded by a bunch of guys that you hope to get anything out of.
Yeah.
And the Clippers kind of aren't either of those teams.
No, they're short one guy either way.
Right. So that's what I'm kind of saying is that, let's take last year's Rockets. You have a superstar surrounded by a bunch of good players. Let's take the Mavericks. It was Dirk surrounded by a bunch of really good players. Take the Heat. You're going to have LeBron. You're going to have Dwayne Wade. You're going to have Chris Bosh. You're going to have LeBron for the Cavs. You're going to have LeBron. You're going to have Kevin Love. You're going to have Kyrie. For Durant, for the Warriors, they have every player. So, the common team setup or dynamic to win championships is you need either three really good players or a superstar with a deep, deep team. And the Clippers were neither of them. Paul George is semi-superstar, Kawhi is a superstar, but their supporting cast was not there to be able to carry the load that they were looking for.
Yeah, and it's not that the supporting cast wasn't talented enough, because they had on paper by far the most talented bench, I think, in the league on paper.
Would you rather have Kawhi or Shai Gilgeous next to you? Would you rather Paul George or Shai Gilgeous?
SGA, and honestly, SGA gives the rest of the team something that they need, which is a guy who can not only create his own shot for himself, but can create a little bit for others. And that's the thing. Like, their bench is talented. They have, great bench pieces, but it doesn't fit their roster construction the way you need it to in the playoffs. Obviously, what they needed was a guy who can make other people better. They don't have one of those guys on the team. It's a collection of fun pieces. It's
when we were at the free agency for this season, which feels like 6 years ago. I really wish I was all in on Horford going to the Clippers. I really wish Horford went to the Clippers here. Salaries wise, he would not get paid as much as he is right now. However, they need that guy. He's not going to help set up your offense, but he's at least an adult in the room to make everyone better around him.
Yeah, it seems like they also just didn't have leadership.
No.
From the player perspective, you could say Doc is a player coach. He knows what to say. He gets the most out of everybody, and that's probably true. But Kawhi is obviously a really quiet guy. He speaks when
all of his teams where he succeeded, which one was he considered to be the leader?
He didn't have to do that in San Antonio. Kyle Lowry was the heart of the Raptors.
Right.
So he didn't have to do it in any spots. Paul George has never been that guy. He was superstar Paul George in Indiana, and it's been downhill since. I've never heard anybody say, who's been a really good guy in the locker room? Paul George. It's not happened. It's not to say that you can't be a really talented player and win and not be a leader. Obviously, Kawhi proved he could do that twice. But they never had that. Patrick Beverley's not that guy. He chirps, he barks, he works hard. He can be all of that underdog by example, but he's not the guy to step up in the locker room and get the most out of everybody. They didn't have that guy on the court who can be the adult and be like, hey, let's get it together. This is what we need to do. They just didn't have it.
At least hindsight 2020, and Kawhi won't regret going from the Raptors to the Clippers, where he gets to have this team and got to spend the entire time in LA. Well, in Orlando.
That brings me to some of the tweets that we got last night.
Ooh.
I don't know how much you followed Dame and CJ's Twitter.
I followed.
Yeah. So CJ McCollum says, "This is my last tweet before I finish the glass. They did vote that they ain't want to play no more, but I didn't think it was going to go out like that."
Incredible.
Dame says, at Pat Bev, "I guess I should extend this Cancun invite since I haven't made my arrangements yet." Just incredible stuff from Dame and CJ. Somehow Dame and CJ managed to shoot better than Kawhi and Paul George last night, and they didn't even play in the game. Look, Kawhi got what he wanted. This dude's won. He got his shoe deal. He's one of two guys who wears New Balance shoes. He's the face. He's as famous as you could be for a New Balance athlete.
And more importantly, he has his rings.
He has his rings. He doesn't need to prove anything to anybody. He's not Chris Paul. He's not Paul George. He's not James Harden. He did it already. So this doesn't really matter for him.
Kawhi's going to be just fine, but this is a fucking disaster for the Clippers.
It's a disaster. And, I mean, when we start getting into our episodes where we break down where each team goes from here, I mean, I guess I'll get into their books more because I haven't really looked at their books too much. But they got some moves to make, and
with limited to no assets to do it.
Yeah, so it's tough because they gave up all their assets for Paul George, who shot the side of the backboard when it mattered most.
They have one more year of this duo, and this is rough. This is, and if they don't get a third guy or this doesn't succeed next year, there's no way these guys are staying. And it's a fucking disaster in regards to, what the Clippers franchise can be if both these guys leave.
Yeah, I don't know how, but I feel Paul George feels like he'll be perfectly fine going and being like background piece on like the Lakers if they could somehow figure out how to make that money. That.
Paul George is your third superstar is great. Paul George's second superstar is not great.
No, Paul George as good as that dude could look at times, it feels like his impact is just falling off a cliff. He's just not scary. He doesn't scare you. He doesn't put fear in you. He's too like lackadaisical and just like cool for school and let the game come to him. Before we transition into what was actually the first game of the night, I'm gonna do a little Larry Villains crossover here, throwing in a couple of your favorite things to transition the two different games. Because your boy...
You're stealing my college shirt and my gimmick. Okay, got it.
Your boy Flea mentioned what we mentioned yesterday, that Patrick Beverley is a wannabe Marcus Smart. Your boy. You're not showing your tattoo. You have a tattoo somewhere, but it's on the other side. There it is.
I don't get it.
There you go.
I love that. Flea is he's such a big basketball fan. He's tweeting nonstop. Diehard Lakers fan. I love it. He loves Marcus Smart though.
Who doesn't love Marcus Smart?
Yeah.
the dude is absolutely all heart. And
we'll cover when are we covering Denver's Lakers? Denver Lakers is gonna be a really fun series. I'm excited for that matchup. When are we doing that? Friday, I guess, for game 1?
Something like that.
Cool. So
in the coming time.
We'll deep dive into that series. Back to Marcus Smart. We talked about it again yesterday where it's kind of like, they're going to do everything they can to possibly defend Tatum, and they got to let other guys beat him. And Marcus Smart almost did.
Almost. So here's what I got out of the game outside of like Celtics Heat stuff, and it's been that way for most of the playoffs. The Eastern Conference has felt like old school basketball.
I was actually thinking that last night, watching those possessions at the end where it's just ISO 1-on-1 who can get a basket. It for sure feels that way in that regard. The
scores feel lower, and a 3-point lead feels like 10 points.
Yeah.
It felt like, I think the Celtics in the overtime went up by 1 at one point, and I was like, oh my God, how is Miami how are they gonna get the lead again? And it's like all they need is one basket. Whereas in the West, the Nuggets went down by 10 plus at one point, and it was like, hey, they can get into the game, just hit a couple of threes, they're back. It doesn't feel like that in the Eastern Conference. They are grinding it out. It's so much fun to watch. And I almost wonder, obviously the Nuggets they just came back from their second 3-1 deficit of the playoffs in the first 2 rounds. So they're battle tested, but their wins, some of them have felt different than the Eastern Conference wins, where every possession feels like you're just getting punched in the face. Not every possession feels like that. I wonder, and the Lakers obviously haven't had to go through that yet. I wonder if the Eastern Conference has kind of a advantage there, that they're ready to play real high-level basketball. I wonder if these Western teams are playing at the same.
Well, I think the difference in that regard, and a reason that can be, is that the East, it's way more grit and grind built teams. It's not star-driven teams. I mean, out of all the teams that that we've been looking at in the East, what's the team with 2 superstars that they just have pieces around? There really doesn't exist that much over here. The Celtics not it. Raptors not it. I guess the Bucks
not
one.
They've one superstar.
No, yeah, Chris Middleton, and then they have Giannis on the side. So they just don't. it's just a different dynamic and different way the teams are built. And that's where I think team basketball is going to end up winning. Getting these superstars, we can see if you're only getting two, it's rough. It doesn't. There's no history that says that having two superstars wins championships.
Yeah. And I wonder if having no superstars, if there's history of that outside of which you could argue Jimmy is, you can argue Tatum is. It feels like neither one of them are at the superstar level yet, but they have such better pieces around them because they're not superstar level players.
It's a salary cap league. When you got to give, 70 or 60% of your cap to two guys and try to fill the rest out, it's a problem. It's hard to make a good basketball team with that as the answer. It's the same idea, in football. If you have a starting quarterback who makes $30 million a year and a wide receiver who makes $25 million a year, you're either going to be really poor on the O-line or you're going to be really bad on defense. Hence, Russell Wilson running for his life.
I mean, and this is kind of the Spurs model, right? I mean, Tim Duncan's your superstar. He's your guy who gets paid. But then you have Manu and Tony Parker who are getting paid appropriately, but they're not making like absolute superstar max deal money. And they're able to fill in role players and have depth and, have a more team dynamic that a lot of these teams haven't had. The two-star thing, you had Kobe and Shaq. That was the last one, obviously.
Sure.
Jordan, but Kobe and Shaq are so far ahead. Those are two top 10 all-time guys.
True. But you also, with that, I mean, on those teams, you had you had depth on the Lakers.
Right. Obviously, things were way different back then, too. Not every player was on a max contract.
Right,
now,
sure.
If you want a third guy on your team.
Now Jamal Murray's getting a max contract.
Like Jamal Murray playing like he deserves it at this point.
Sure.
But if you want a third guy, like eventually Kyle Kuzma is going to be like, you know what? I deserve the max.
Yep.
And that's insane. Like you can't pay third guys like that unless you for some reason have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown who they're on rookie deals or, and you could sign Kemba Walker, who's not ideally a guy who should make that much money, especially at his age, but you can afford to do that because the time is now. You have that cap space. You got to use it somewhere and blah, blah, blah. Or Gordon Hayward.
They really need Gordon Hayward back in the series.
Does an 80% Gordon Hayward, how much of a difference does he make?
Well, I think a big problem is kind of what you and I were talking about yesterday, is the conversation of what the hell, who does Kemba cover? It's a big problem, I feel. Kemba, there's no one for him to cover, and if he's not setting up the offense or playing as well as he can, he's a liability out there right now. He's not killing it.
He hit a really big shot late. He shot poorly. He had 19 points on 19 shots, which honestly is better than I was expecting it to be when I looked at it. But yeah, he's having a hard time. If he's not making shots, it's hard for him to impact the game because he's not a Chris Paul type point guard who's going to go just run the offense, break everything down, and end up with like 15 assists. That's never been his game. He's always been a score-first guy. Yeah. And it's not to say that he's selfish because he's definitely a guy who will get everybody involved. He's not going to hog it. He's not going to
he hasn't done this before.
This is not his game. He's always been, lead dog. And now he's trying to mix in how he handles that role with also conceding that to Jason Tatum, who was incredible for most of the game and then settled for jumpers late.
Yeah.
And then,
I think yes. The answer is yes. I think they do need Gordon Hayward because, this team, Marcus Smart put up 26 points. He hit 6 threes. You're gonna bank on that happening again?
Maybe one more time in the 7 games.
So I can guarantee you that I'm confident. I feel like Gordon Hayward has a higher percentage chance to get the 26 or more points more consistent than Marcus Smart can.
Yeah, I agree. But that's assuming he's at a level with his ankle that
sure
it makes sense him being out there because we've seen him get injured on the Celtics team. And obviously, I mean, the leg injury was incredibly gruesome and hard to come back from. But when he comes back, he plays tentative. And he gets into a groove, and then he gets hurt, and he comes back, and it's this just repeating pattern of playing tentative. And it's like, hey, you have limited games to be back. You can't play tentative. Not to say you need to press and, overdo things, but you kind of got to get back to the same level everybody else is at because you're running out of time. You can't just play your way into a groove. It's not an 8-game play-in game.
Let's give kudos to where needs to go. I think Goran Dragic, this dude is just slicing him. They have no answer for Goran Dragic.
Hey, Goran Dragic, he's getting the 1-year max.
He's doing anything he wants. Jimmy Butler, again, continues to be the dark knight of the team, doing whatever the team needs to win. Hit a huge fucking 3 at the end, playing great defense. Jimmy Butler's doing exactly what he needs to do on this team.
All right, so I want to talk about Jimmy. So I'm going to put this graphic. I'm going to put this graphic up that Kurt Goldsberry posted.
Oh, you have him in a goddamn Bulls uniform? That's ridiculous.
It's a Heat uniform. All right, so let's read this. He made 28% of 267 jumpers this year out of 190 players that tried at least 200. He ranked last in field goal percentage and effective field goal percentage. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Boston Celtics fans wanted Jimmy Butler shooting that last 3?
Oh, God, no. Jimmy Butler, he's been on fire. Again, I've been saying it each time. He's been on fire every fucking game from 3. Granted, he's only taking a few shots. It's not like he's putting up 10 and hitting 5, but he's putting up 3 and hitting 2 almost every game.
He lets the game come to him. And, look, sometimes stats tell a story. Jimmy Butler has never been an atrocious shooter. He just, for whatever reason, a lot of the shots that he'd normally make this year, he missed. So he's got this horrible percentage. And this is why stats lie sometimes. And this is why people who like to use advanced stats and rely on them fully without watching the games put themselves in trouble. Because
you sound like Russell Westbrook defending himself for the last 5 years combined.
Right. Well, my counter to that is the stat for Russell Westbrook.
It's a triple-double.
Russell Westbrook's right there with Jimmy in the graphic. And for Russell Westbrook, it makes sense. But I guarantee...
How can you say it on pass? I have a triple-double, but don't you understand?
That's basic math. Check out the trophies. I guarantee that the Boston Celtics, Brad Stevens isn't in the locker room. He's not in the video sessions like, hey, guys, Jimmy Butler, last in shooting this year. Leave that dude open. It's not happening.
No.
That's not happening. There's that graphic is clickbait stuff. It's clickbait.
100%. Yeah, Jimmy's been on fire in the playoffs. Again, I swear my life when I said that, he's been shooting 2 for 3 from the 3-point line, I promise I didn't know his stat. I looked it up after, and yeah, he shot for 2 for 3 last night from 3. Because that's what he's doing every game. He's just hitting these big shots when he needs to. More kudos. Bam. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
But you gotta say it. It's almost like, it's almost like, you don't have to say it because it's so ridiculous, but Jesus fucking Christ.
I mean, I literally watched that. And the camera angle that Tatum took or that they had on Tatum when he attacked, I thought he was going to slam it home with nobody there.
Yeah,
and his Bam was standing behind.
Who did Tatum blow by? Whoever the primary ball defender was, he was
blocking Bam in the camera.
Right.
But he blew by him. Bam was getting blocked in the shot, and then out of nowhere he comes and block. Look, it is one of the best blocks of all time.
It's fucking insane.
So one of the questions that I had, and obviously I didn't give this to you ahead of time, so who knows, but you usually know weird stuff like this.
Nice.
Where do you think this Bam's block ranks in all-time sports defensive sequences? Because it's one of the all-time great blocks, but where do you think it ranks in sports in general?
So the hard part with that is it's game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
For sure.
So I think that's gonna be your killer there. There's granted, humongous fucking block. It is humongous. But if you're talking about all sports, it's rough because football individually have, it's one game for Super Bowl or something like that. So, for example, Larry Allen getting 2 picks on the Cowboys and one's a pick 6, that's humongous stuff. So it's just individual performances on a much bigger scale game compared to it being game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think it's going to be hard in regards to that. I mean, you got to call out LeBron's block in there, but overall, that LeBron block we've seen that 1,000 times. Like it's just the thing that was huge about that block was the situation. It was the moment, the situation that it was in, the time it was in. But that block for Bam, we do not see that all the time. And Jesus fucking Christ, that was a man's block.
Yeah, it was just from an athletic, physical freak perspective. I don't think like that's the thing that makes it, I think, stand out in sports moments, because there's not many moments where you're like, how on earth did that happen?
Oh yeah, that was not
from a physical perspective. Obviously, other blocks. You got Tayshaun
the dude from the Eagles who stripped Brady 3 years ago.
Yeah,
those that won the Super Bowl for them. So it's like situations like it's hard to tell. Hard to compare all sports because of one game of football is basically 7 games of basketball.
Yeah, so this is more of a hindsight play. Like if this series ends up being 7 and Miami wins, you look at this and the play automatically becomes much bigger because it was now it was a series changing play because they ended up winning a game that they possibly could have lost.
Yeah, for sure.
If they win in 5, it's like
put that comment up.
What do we got?
I like it. So for sure, LeBron's block was 2 minutes left. When I argue LeBron's block not being the best fucking defense in those last 2 minutes, because the best defense in those last 2 minutes is when Kevin Love he got swished on to Steph Curry, and Steph Curry had nowhere to go. Kevin Love shut that dude down. Steph had to settle for a bad long jumper. That defense was fucking insane. There's no highlight reel play like the block, but Kevin Love shut down Steph in those last that last play.
Yeah, and that was a possession that I think Kevin Love does get a lot of credit for.
But you're not going to see, when the NBA is airing, this is the NBA, and you're highlighting what's going to be coming up for the upcoming game. That's not in the video montage.
No, it's not a highlight because Steph Curry missed the shot.
It's not the stat sheet either. You don't have a stat clip for it.
No, because he didn't steal the ball. He didn't block the ball. He just played good positional defense and blocked them. So yeah, that was a huge play in that Cavs series. I mean, it's funny enough, like all 3 Cavs in the big 3 had to come up huge to win that series. I mean, LeBron's block, Kevin Love's defensive possession, Kyrie shot.
So I think that this series is going to be a slugfest. Like this one's already looking 7. It's a ton of fun. Anytime Tyler Hero catches the ball, I feel, anytime he has the ball and he's moving with it, I feel like if I were to have a kid, and you're watching your kid play, and the nerve that must be eating you inside, that's how I feel with Hero for some reason. That I think I'm more nervous when he has the ball than he is.
Right.
Like he is just so confident in anything he does. I'm like, oh, this is the one. Oh, nope, great bounce pass leading to a basket. It's nuts. I have nothing. Miami, they are just a ton of fun to watch. I'm sure Brad Stevens is going to make some adjustments going to the next game. Granted, it was a close game. It was a close game, so it's not like you got huge adjustments to make. But we need Kemba to play a little bit better and get a little bit more of his baskets. For him, going 6 for 19, that's going to be rough. You can't guarantee Marcus Smart's going to get put up another 26 points. Hitting 6 threes is huge. Also, isn't 3-point shooting ruining the NBA? Both teams. It feels like every team is shooting less threes than anyone else.
I don't mind. Shoot as many threes as you want in the Eastern Conference. This feels like old school basketball, regardless of the 3-point attempts. For my Tyler Hero thing,
how about this?
I agree.
To me, it's not. It doesn't feel like old school basketball. It doesn't feel like 90s and 80s, but it feels in the mid 2000s.
Well, here's the thing. It doesn't. The basketball's way better. It looks cleaner because it's modernized. It's just everybody's competing and rotating and figuring out how to close and make all of the new stuff hard. Which eventually it's going to happen. Somebody's going to figure out how to defensively break all of these offensive schemes. Whether it's a player who comes along and breaks it, whether it's a coach who figures out a scheme, it'll be broken, and we're going to have to adapt more. And it's
when they move the 3-point line and they cut off the quarter 3.
Yeah, which even if that happens, I don't know. I don't even know if that fixes it. Players just be like, fine, I'll shoot it. As Antoine Walker said, if there ain't the only reason I don't shoot, what do you say? Something about there's not enough threes because I don't know. I screwed this up. It's something about he'd shoot 4s if he could. He'd shoot 4s. That's why he shoots so many threes.
I put have the butcher's ass. Wait, it's your butcher.
One last thing with Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero doesn't make sense to me because he seems like the overconfident kid that actually is a screw up. He reminds me so much of Kenny from Can't Hardly Wait, who is just like this white hip hop dude who is just super corny. Whereas
keeping it real.
He's keeping it real. And at the end of the day, he's just not as cool as he portrays himself to be, but he's not in on the joke. Everybody knows he's not that cool.
Right.
And that's what it feels like Tyler Hero is, but Tyler Hero actually is that cool. So it doesn't make sense to me.
No, I mean, you need these rookies to step up. Like, this is, again, for championship teams, you have other players, other guys step up. It happens every year. You have somebody step up that you did not expect to step up. Mario Chalmers was big on those series for the Heat. He was a rookie. Rajon Rondo was huge for those Celtics teams. Another big three. But you have somebody else stepping up all the time, and the team that has the most guys step up usually wins.
Yeah, and that's true. It's amazing how much more fun this Heat team is than that LeBron team is to root for.
It's just the timing of it. LeBron was a dick the way he handled it, but I mean, he changed basketball forever. No, that's not Jamie Kennedy.
No, it's not Jamie Kennedy. It's
Seth Green.
Seth Green, yeah. But Jamie Kennedy would kind of be.
But yeah, close.
Yeah, that's a good example. It's the same.
Malibu's Most Wanted.
Yeah, Malibu's Most Wanted.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's not Malibu's Most Wanted. It's Seth Green, Can't Hardly Wait, but the characters are not far off. And that's what I feel like when I look at Tyler Hero. Like Jimmy Butler posted a picture on his Instagram a couple of days ago of Tyler Hero wearing a do-rag.
What's Jamie Kennedy up to?
There's no way to know. But man, yeah, we're gonna come back tomorrow. We will kind of do what preview for
that dude's 50.
Jamie Kennedy or Seth Green. That's wild.
Yeah, that is insane.
All right, we're gonna come back tomorrow. We're gonna talk Heat Celtics. We will probably preview Nuggets Lakers a little bit, and we're probably gonna come back with some other topics as well. Some mystery topics that we haven't decided yet.
Nice.
But, yeah, that's gonna be for tomorrow. Any final thoughts on anything?
That's all I got. I think this is. I think we should be blessed with an enjoyment with this ton of fun basketball that we got, man. No one expected it to be like this, and it's been really fucking enjoyable. I really am enjoying these games. Just think of last night in general, like that. Can you imagine having those games like that 3 months ago? It's nuts. Yeah. It's a ton of fun. Really enjoying it. Kudos to everyone there.
Yeah, it's amazing. So happy. One of the best overall playoffs I think that we've gotten in a really long time with a new cast of characters. Normally when these TV shows, they bring in the new cast, you start checking out, but
that's not true. The Knicks had the same cast for the last 20 years. God fucking damn it, man. Like you see watching other teams get these guys to just step up randomly, and it's just like, fuck.
All right.
How did we not accidentally pick the right guy?
Well, you know what's worse? When you have that guy and you give him away for a bunch of players who haven't helped you win more than 30 games. That sucks just as much. Watching Jimmy Butler possibly lead a franchise to the NBA Finals is both, brings me joy because I love Jimmy and what he represents, and deep sadness because he was on my team and it sucks. So I'm going to let that marinate and I don't know, maybe pour one out tonight for myself. So we'll see you tomorrow. Before I over frustrate myself here. Peace out, guys.